Hey customizers, welcome back to Tucking Tiki Where Wicked Work. Hey customizers, welcome to the next series of tutorial videos. This one's going to be for the Dreadnoks. We are going to be taking this ugly Stingraider and turning it into a gloriously swanky swamp boat in some of the Dreadnok colors. I say some because there are more than one set of Dreadnok colors. If you've noticed already, this Stingraider is missing guns, so we are actually going to also do some scratch building in this series. And the whole point of this is to start off with the basics. So it is a beginner's channel using very simple techniques, easy to follow stuff. That will allow you to start or maybe even advance your customizing abilities and skills. So for this one here, we've seen a custom of this already. This was done up in the 1984 colors. The Stinger there with Baroness, and that turned out rather nicely, I think. So we're going to take the same boat with some parts missing, and we are going to convert it into a Dreadnok boat. And which kind of makes sense to me because you saw the original water moccasin was in that nice kind of aqua turquoise color, whatever you want to call it, and it seemed to fit. And you know, there's debates about whether or not Copperhead is a Dreadnok or not, but given the striking array of colors that the Dreadnoks have, and that this is indeed an airboat, a swamp boat, whatever you want to call it, a fan boat, and we certainly hate the name Stingraider. We're going to take this one apart and we're going to repaint it. So like everything else, it's going to be a matter of simple color blocking. The visualization process, for those of you who have never watched one of these videos before, I've already done in my head. And as per usual, if you haven't seen one of these videos before, the visualization process just allows you to draw on a computer image, just a simple picture you download off the internet or whatever, your color layouts. And what that does is it helps you cement your picture in your mind, or if you think you have a good idea and you see it on the computer screen and you don't like it, then you can change it to make it work. And it's an indispensable tool. The more you do it, the more you get used to it, and sometimes depending on how strong your idea is, you can do it right in your head. So in this case, most of this is in my head, and some of it's not. So as always, I reserve the right to change my mind as I go, and so can you. So, without further ado, this is a modern vehicle, so it's not all just snapped together. In this case, this one usually favors, I find, almost 50-50, where it snaps together and then there's some screws as well. So one of the tools we're gonna need, which I put right here, is I wouldn't say a micro, but it's certainly a thin screwdriver, because although these screws in the bow and these screws in the stern are pretty close to the surface, the ones amidships here, they are just right in there, and I don't know who came up with that idea, but I dislike them. So we'll start with the middle ones first. And you want to go firm and steady with this, because, well, quite frankly, you've got to factor in the stiffness of the screws themselves, and they probably get put in there on their assembly line very quickly, and maybe things cool and stick together and stuff. So when in doubt, don't force it, because what can happen is you strip the screws and then you're kind of hooped. There's a few articles, if you will, online about how to remove a stripped screw from a G.I. Joe vehicle or figure or something like that. I've had mixed success with it, so I find a little bit of care on the front end alleviates the problem on the back end, so to speak. If that is the case, like this one's really tough. This one doesn't want to play. And that one's going to start to be stripped. So I'll have to probably sort that out off screen because the camera's in the way. Oh yeah. Yeah, so you can see there the back too. They're not stripped yet, but they are definitely fighting me. So maybe some Loctite or something like that. So anyway, of course this is going to give me trouble because I'm videotaping. Videotaping, how old am I, eh? It's a phone. I'm doing this all on a phone and I'm saying videotape. Does anybody else remember the struggle of listening to audio tapes when it got eaten up by the cassette player and you had to take the pencil out and wind it back up? I almost missed that, but I really don't. So it turns out that after my long diatribe of being easy with the screws, they are not being easy with me. So we are gonna Oh, I'm gonna have to do this off camera, so give me 1 sec here and we'll be right back. Like we said, right? Warts and all, and now you can see how tough some of these screws are to come out. You can see there's some metal flaking coming out on that bit there. So I'm gonna have to do this off screen so I can use some body English, and then I'll explain to you the process I use to do that when I come back. So just hang tight. Okay, and there we go. I got it sorted out, and I'll tell you exactly what I did. It's very high tech. All I did was switch the screwdriver I was using. So, what does that mean? All screwdrivers are not created equal. So the screwdriver on the right here has a very narrow Phillips. You can see there how pointy. So let's get this thing to focus. There we go. You can see how pointy that one is. This one here is a little more blunt. This is a small screwdriver set I got at Princess Auto, and this is the one I actually used to disassemble G.I. Joe figures. And it was proving to be the right diameter to get all of the whatever you want to call them. Let's call them the blades of the Phillips head into the screw to get it out. And just with a little bit of body English, they came out just fine, no stripped screws. So that's all it took. If it wasn't going to work, what I was going to try first was WD-40, and then see if I had anything else after that, which usually means scouring the internet to see what other people do in the same situation. So in this case, it's one of these. If you've never seen these before, it's really handy. They come with a bunch of different bits, and it's just a micro, if you call it that, a micro screwdriver. I like this one because the cap rotates, because after holding that jammed in the palm of your hand and trying to turn it for a while, you can get blisters and stuff like that. So I got palm olive hands, and I like to keep them that way. So anyway, so now we got all the screws I can find out of it, and a lot of it's you know, just pull apart. This is unlike the original water moccasin, if you've never seen one of these before, where in the original, this was doesn't have this cup down here, like nobody sat inside of it. It was just a turret ring with like a crotch bar, which is whatever. And then the inside of the water moccasin was completely hollow. But as you can see here, this has walls all the way down. So it's a, you know, slot A and a tab B, it's in a firm cup. So if you find that you're trying to work on the same vehicle and disassemble it, that it might be maybe a little tough, it's just the suction of the two surfaces being right beside each other. So there's that. And we'll disassemble the cannon, no problem. And then the rest of the stuff just starts to come apart, right? We don't want to force it too much. When in doubt, just walk away from it and come back, right? We don't want to break this stuff. Even if it already is broken, we don't want to create any more work for ourselves. So all the storage bins come off, and we'll talk about what's on there in a sec. And we got some moving parts in this one. That's what I like about this subject. So we talked about sometimes losing some functionality when custom painting things, and that's going to be the case until we find some super hard clear coat. And that's just something we'll have to deal with. But in this case, we have a spinning propeller with a flywheel on here, and we've got the steering vanes with their cross-link bar to work with as well. However, given the design of everything, any paint removal from those surfaces should be, within reason, hidden by the fact of, by dint of design. So you can see that there's nothing, well, there's that little seam there in between the pivot point for the vane and the actual duct for the fan. You won't be able to see any of that paint coming off if you put paint on that surface. So let's get a little bit more here. I'm trying a new camera angle as well, which actually kind of helps me a bit to see what I'm doing, hopefully a little bit more effectively. God knows I won't be happy with it, and the next step will be getting one of those crane things or whatever. So there we go. And that was just a little bit of pressure on there, and the surface is removed. So something to keep in mind too, right? We've got the foot pegs here. So if you're planning on putting figures on this afterwards, the foot pegs are going to be a different size. They're sized for the modern figures, not the vintage. And with the tread up here, depending on what your scheme is, you may have to mask this off if you wanted to keep your top side scheme here and have the lower hull a different color. So for simplicity's sake, which I'm definitely all about, we are just going to use the separate pieces for the most part to demarcate our color changes. So the bottom's going to be a dark color and the top's going to be a light color. I don't know if I'm going to, like how this is like a gunmetal jet exhaust color and this is red. I don't know in this Dreadnought scheme yet if I'm going to make these two separate colors as well. I might just make it one. Reason being, I'm a huge fan of the turquoise blue-green color they use, which I'm now going to start trying to call Emerald Faded, and there's a reason for that. The hunt for Dreadnought colors has been extremely painful, and hopefully I will be saving you that pain. Especially crossing platforms from spray cans to airbrush or hand brushing. And what I found out was the best colors aren't even available in Canada, so there's a big shocker for you. But I found a solution after doing some digging and leveraging the model airplane hobby side of the house. So once again, this is going to prove to be a perfect job for airbrushing for anybody watching this video who doesn't have access to American hardware stores. And we will have a universal answer for everybody. There we go. Of all the things I lost, I miss my mind the most. Here we go. So now I'm just going to take out the inner workings here. Sorry for bumping the camera. Yeah, screws are nice and tight in this, and that's technically a good thing. Who likes loose screws? Oh, and spare parts. I don't even know where that came from. It's going to be so exciting. It looks vital. We'll leave it out. There we go. There we go. So all I'm doing is getting those last two screws there. That's what's holding the fan mechanism inside the upper hull here. Yeah. So while we're doing this, what I've chosen for my overall scheme, because we said there's multiple Dreadnought colors, right? There we go. Pop that out, and all that comes apart too. I'm going to go with the same colors I did my Skyhawk in. If you haven't seen that, it's the same colors as the Ground Assault, which are the emerald green, the extremely dark blue, with that yellow-green highlight. And that yellow-green, if you don't remember or have never owned a Dreadnought toy, like a vintage Dreadnought toy, that is actually photochromic, so it changes color in the sun, which actually provides a bit of, I don't want to say an obstacle, but a consideration for when you're picking your colors and trying to color match for Dreadnoks. The problem being is that it's 40-odd-year-old plastic. It's a photochromic dye that's in the plastic, and of course that effect may or may not last over the ages. Like I have a Xandar figure, for example, that still turns blue. Was it as blue as it was in the 80s? Couldn't tell you, because it wasn't mine from childhood, but when people take pictures of their stuff, if you're looking online for references, people's toys will be in different conditions, right? So different conditions means, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So for something that is designed to react to sunlight and change color, right, that may not last, and you don't know where on the spectrum of its color change that it decided to crap out, or even if it you know, if it stays on one end of the spectrum or the other. I don't know, I'm not an expert. So in looking up different Dreadnought vehicles and trying to match those colors, because like I said, it can be a very challenging thing to do, that's something to keep in mind, is that, you know, plastic fades. You know, even if you took something like the Killer Whale, which is olive drab, and somebody left it out in the sun versus one that wasn't, the color would be different. So all that's to say is when you're doing your color matching, be patient and take that into account. And all this stuff's coming apart. I'm not worried about taking the blue thing off the black thing so much. It is in there with a pressure pin, whatever you want to call that. But this whole bar is going to be basically hidden, so I'm just going to get paint on there, and then we'll let the rest fall where it may. We got our nice propeller there. So all the parts have been disassembled except for this. And the windscreen here, it doesn't just click in, it's got posts on either side. So we're not worried. Like, that came out nice. This one's being finicky here. Oh yeah, and there it is. So what we've done just now, yeah, not a problem. So you can see here, I just broke it, right? It's, for whatever reason, it's stuck in there. It could be, like I said, the cooling process, right? Because the stuff gets poured, then they assemble together and shove it in a box, so some kid can go, yay, G.I. Joe! Especially with the modern stuff, some of it just sticks. It almost looks like there's some kind of crappy adhesive here too, which could also be part of the problem. Why glue it when you're pinning it? But I get it. So anyway, we have part of the canopy broken off in there. What does that mean? Not a darn thing, because you can't see it. See, it goes back together, no problem. So, little bit of broken piece there. That's happened to me before. It'll happen to you. Don't get frustrated. Don't get flustered. It's part of the process. And, you know, several tutorials ago, like I said, you gotta respect the process. So, we have all of our stuff taken apart. I might even... I don't know why. If you look in the... I'm looking at the torpedo bay right here for this little floppy ski torpedo thing that looks rather... Anyway. It's a different color. And that is kind of useless as a different color. So I think I'll just keep it there and I'll make it all one color. See, we can erase the mistakes that Hasbro makes. It's great. Hey, that's almost a slogan. We can erase the mistakes that Hasbro makes. Anyway, if Hasbro's watching this, I'm just kidding. I love you guys, but accept your pricing. Okay, so tampoed markings. This is a perfectly good Cobra symbol here. The problem is that we don't really want to use... Oh, I don't really want to use red on this scheme. And the dark color that you see on the Dreadnok vehicles actually isn't black. It's an extremely dark blue. Now, does that mean that you can't keep this black for your custom? No, because like everything else, it's your choice. Do what you want. At the end of the day, as long as you're happy, then you're successful. If you're unhappy, then you are unsuccessful. In this case, what I'm going to show you is that hemming and hawing about it, I am going to probably repaint this thing. I'm not going to leave it black. But I'm going to paint the upper hull first, because what that lets me do is change my mind, right? If you're not sure about something, leave it off to the side, right? And you can come to it later. There's no set order you have to do this in. In fact, if you want to do it in a certain way, which gives you more time to choose what you want to do, then do it that way. And I did this with my last one. I kept the lower hull last because I wanted to match the upper hull with the same gloss black, and I was deciding what to do with this, if it was in the right spot and whatever, in the right color. So in this case, with tampoed markings, right, these aren't stickers, they came pre-applied. If you run your finger over it, you'll actually feel the texture of it. So it stands proud of the surface. So if you were to paint over this, even with spray paint, you would notice the edges of it. So we're going to erase those. If I decide to do that anyway, I'll tell you how to do it later, but we would sand those down with progressively finer sandpapers to the point where we basically get the same, not necessarily the same high gloss as the hull, but close enough to it so when we prime it, it'll disappear. So that's something to keep in mind. For this plastic here on the side storage bins, it's a different textured plastic. It's actually two different kinds of plastic or whatever. And you can feel it maybe a little bit. That might be just me telling myself that I feel it. But in which case, treating it with a little bit of very fine sandpaper and smoothing it out wouldn't hurt either. So that is going to be done, at least on those parts. But the hull we're going to leave till later because, like I said, worst case, if I want to keep it black, I might remove this and paint it black, or just leave it because nobody will ever see it. So yeah, like I said, the big takeaway from this whole thing so far is when you take it apart, yeah, some things will break, that's fine, you can fix them or ignore them because they won't be seen. And in this case, if you're not sure yet, it's like, well, you know, the blue is so close to black, and if, like, I looked at 100 pictures of Dreadnok stuff, and it was only 1 or 2 pictures that I saw. I was like, that's not black, that's like a super dark blue. The other thing that tipped me off was looking at modern convention exclusives of vintage vehicles. So they re-released the Dreadnok Ground Assault Stinger, or whatever the heck it was called. And they didn't even bother trying to hide it. They just went straight blue. So yeah. Yeah, and with all the Dreadnok colors, I mean, you look at the Dreadnok Tricycle, whatever it's called, it's got loads of colors in it. But my favorite, I love that that emerald green and that super dark blue. I love the contrast of the colors, so that's what we're going to do. So now that I've got everything taken apart, including the cockpit, right, that's going to get painted as well. The good news is that there's no friction points that we have to worry about. You can sit a figure in there and it's not going to harm anything, the figure or the paint job, as long as you're still, you know, showing the reasonable amount of care. And we are good to go. So, for this plastic here, the modern plastic, it tends to be way shinier and smoother. It's certainly not worse than the vintage plastic, especially when you consider it's been aged 4 years. But in this case, it tends to be definitely an argument to prime. So in this case, I will be priming these parts before we add color. And if you know what to do from here and you just want to know what colors are going on, give me 2 seconds here and I will show you. I have an array of colors. My dark blue, where did it go? I just put up a new paint rack here, so I'm trying to rediscover where everything is. And why would I do that before the video starts? Because that's just silly. And my dark blue's in there somewhere. Anyway, I'll tell you about it. So, here's what I found. I had a color made by a very obscure company that, after all of my searching to find a lagoon turquoise, whatever the spray can color was called, equivalent, I tried it. I had it in my collection the entire time, and I was super stoked with it. This is Vallejo Model Air Cockpit Emerald Green Faded. I know that's a lot to say. It sounds like a weird color, but what it is it's from, so airplane builders can build Soviet aircraft. All their cockpits were this color because doctors thought it made them more relaxed before they crashed into the ground. And there it is. So this is the same title as the original paint, and when I used it, I was absolutely convinced. So that is my solid recommendation for painting it. If you get it, if you don't have an airbrush and you just want to use Vallejo model color, they should have the same color. I'm pretty sure it's like a 1-for-1. They make it in both lines, but it's Cockpit Emerald Green Faded, brought to you by Vallejo, so thank you very much for that. The dark blue I was using, it's the same color that Korean war fighters are made, that super dark blue. Some World War II fighters were like that too. I want to say that it's like navy sea blue or gloss sea blue or something like that. Anyways, I'll get it sorted out. I apologize for not having it here. I thought it was way more easily found than it is, so it happens. And for the green color, when I did my Skyhawk, I mixed 2 colors together. It was a green and a yellow by Citadel. I was very happy with it, but it was more a matter of mixing to taste, and nailing it is going to be extremely difficult because, again, we're looking at a photochromic piece, which, depending on your reference photos and the lighting those photos are taken in, will make it look different. So rather than chase it all over the place, I have 2 colors here by different companies. One's Fantasy and Games, and the other is Scale Color. The one is called Fall Green from Scale Color, and Fantasy Games is called Toxic Waste Green, which is pretty sweet. They may look a little bright on camera here, but what I've discovered in my research is that when you look at them up close, the one on the right here is a little more drab than this one is. So I think either way, they both work, right? We're trying to capture that photochromic yellow-green color, and I think they both work. So what I would do is I'm going to start with the one on the left, and I'll show that to you during the process, and if I don't like it, I'll switch to this one. But that's what they are: Scale Color, Fall Green, and Fantasy and Games Toxic Waste Green. So if you want to jump on your own from here and carry on, go for it. But in the meantime, I'm going to prime these up, and in the next episode we will start applying the color. So we're working with a bigger subject here. We're working with a boat. I wanted to show you guys something different rather than another Mobat or a Skyhawk or something. Not that I don't have enough of those to still paint, but in the meantime, what I'll say is choose your colors. You can use mine recommendations if you want, and remember, be safe, be cool, have fun.